Brand new polling is showing that Republicans are about to reclaim the Senate with big victories. What is up, people of the internet? It is me, Real American, back in with a new video today. We had to talk about the 2024 US Senate elections because it appears that Republicans are about to reclaim the Senate. Yeah, that's right. Despite all the narratives surrounding the election, despite everyone claiming that Democrats are going to somehow keep the Senate, they're going to expand their majority, despite that, it appears that Republicans are on pace for huge victories, not just to have a small majority. We could see Republicans with a big majority come this January. And I know that sounds crazy because just a couple weeks ago, everyone was dooming that the Senate was gone for Republicans, that there's no way they're going to have a big majority. And if they did have a majority, it would be such a small majority that people like Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, and John Curtis, they would effectively screw up any type of majority Republicans would have. Well, it looks like, no, that's not the case. And in fact, there's a good chance we could see Republicans with an actual majority, not one led by Lisa Murkowski or Susan Collins. Look at this poll from RMG Research out of Montana. Sheehy +7. That's not a misquote. That's not a typo. Not Sheehy +1. Not Sheehy +2 or 3. No. Sheehy +7. That's a 12-point shift in just 1 month. Listen, I am not saying it's a foregone conclusion that Tester's going to lose, but at this point in time, I don't really see how Tester can win. I'm sorry, but it's true. I just don't see a pathway for Tester right now. Is it possible that he could pull off the upset? Of course it is. There's a chance that a big scandal hits Sheehy and Tester by some miracle wins. But right now, he has a bunch of problems. For starters, Sheehy's already at 50%. And not just from one pollster. Look at the RCP average. Fabrizio, Rasmussen, NBC. They all have Sheehy above 50% or just at 50%. His second problem is, well, look at the margin. It's Sheehy +6, +7, +6, +7. Which, by the way, RMG Research just last month, they had Tester +5. So that's a 12-point shift in just 1 month. 1 month, it went from Tester +5 to Sheehy +7. And the third problem, and I would argue it's the biggest problem, the remaining undecided voters, they're Trump voters. That's his biggest problem, Tester's biggest problem. These are Trump voters that are undecided. Is it possible he could win a chunk of them? Maybe. Maybe because people know who Tester is, but the problem is, more than likely, the vast majority of these undecided voters who are Trump voters, they're going to break for Sheehy. So there's a possibility that Tester could lose by upwards of like 12 points. I'm not saying that's for sure going to happen, but start doing the math. Sheehy's up by 7. He's above 50%. And the undecided voters, they lean heavily to the right. So right now, I really believe that Montana, that's gone for Democrats. And you look at the map here, if Montana goes Republican, well, it becomes so much easier for Republicans to pull it off. And you look at other states like Nebraska. Can we stop pretending that this is a competitive race? Will it be closer than the presidential level? Yeah, because Deb Fischer's a shit candidate, but Nebraska's not going to vote for the Democrat, Osborne. They won't. Will it be closer because he's an independent, or I should say a quote-unquote independent? Yeah. But even then, it's going to be like Fischer +10. And you look at states like Texas and Florida, go to the RCP average. Right now, it's Cruz +5. Now, there are some polls out there that are not good for Cruz. But the problem for Allred is two things. Number one, this is Texas. Like, this is not a swing state. This is not a Democrat state. It's the state of Texas. And it seems like right now, Trump is winning Texas by like 8 to 10 points. So if Trump is up by 8 to 10 points, do you really think that Cruz is going to do 10 points worse than Trump? Maybe 2 to 3. I could see that. But even then, I really believe at this point in time, Texas is gone for Democrats. Well, it's not a foregone conclusion that Democrats are going to lose the state, but I find it so unlikely that Colin Allred could win. I just don't think it's going to happen. And the same thing's happening in Florida. Like, why are people believing that Rick Scott's going to lose? Rick Scott, in a blue wave, went up against Bill Nelson, a popular senator, in a blue wave. And not just a Republican state. This was Florida in 2018. This was before it turned into a Republican state. This was a swing state. Yet Rick Scott won by a very close margin, but he still won. And now he's the incumbent. He's in Florida, which is becoming more and more Republican with each passing day. And the Democrat he's going against is not that strong. So I don't see how people could say, well, Florida's going to flip to the Democrats. I don't really see how that's going to happen. And just like that, because of one Senate race, Montana, looking so good for Republicans, the GOP's already at 51 Senate seats. And there's a bunch of other opportunities for the Republican Party. They have upwards of 8 seats that I could see possibly going their way. Now, does that mean they're all going to flip Republican? No. There are some that I don't think Republicans are going to win as of now. That's, of course, a state like Maryland. Now, Hogan is only down by like a couple points. Hell, there's some polls out there that has Hogan actually winning. But it's Maryland. It's one of the states where it's very Democrat, and even with Hogan being a well-liked governor, or I should say a former governor, it's still Maryland. It's a very Democrat state, and it's not a governor's race. This is a Senate race during a presidential cycle. And Larry Hogan, in my opinion, has not been running the best campaign. Now, it seems like Democrats are a bit worried in Maryland. I mean, they're spending a bunch of money there. But I still think Maryland's going to go towards the Democrats. I really think that it's possible for Hogan to win, but I think right now, it's probably going towards the Democrat Party. And the same thing with Virginia, though Democrats might be in trouble there. I can't believe I'm saying that, but the early voting looks like trash for the Democrats there. It is bad. They're getting crushed. It looks awful. The polling's very close there. But the problem is, Tim Kaine is, relatively speaking, a well-liked guy in Virginia. He's not an electoral juggernaut. He's not gonna win by 15 points, but I just think right now, Virginia is looking more and more Democrat. Now, there's a possibility that if Trump actually pulls it off in Virginia, there's a chance Honeycow could pull it off. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but with how bad the early voting looks in Virginia, there's a possibility that Republicans, in a best-case scenario, could maybe, just maybe pull it off. But right now, we're just going to say fine. It's leaning to the left, and Tim Kaine, more than likely, is going to win. But the problem for Democrats is, well, this should be expected. These are two states that are fairly Democrat, or on paper they're Democrat, and they're barely winning both of them. Granted, I'm not saying that means that Republicans are going to win 58 Senate seats, but the fact that they're barely holding on in Maryland and Virginia, that's not a good sign for them at all. In fact, you could argue that's a disaster, because these are two states that lean to the left, especially Maryland, and the fact that that Hogan's not that far behind, in fact, some polls have him winning, they might be in trouble, because if Maryland flips, at that point, there's no shot that Democrats could win any kind of majority. Because at that point, you have to win a state like Texas and Florida. If Republicans win Maryland, no matter what else happens, they could hold on to everything else. They still have to flip Texas and Florida just to be at 50-50. And then hope that Harris wins. That's their only pathway if Hogan wins. But I'm not saying it's going to happen. But either way, you look at these other Senate races and you realize quickly that, oh, wait a minute. These races are looking very good for Republicans, especially Ohio. Yeah, remember when everyone was saying that Bernie Moreno was done? He had no pathway to winning. He was going to lose in a landslide. It's all over for him. Remember that? Yeah. RMG research, Moreno +2. This happens every single year. For those that don't know, Ohio polling before like early October, late September, it is always much more Democrat than it really is. Every year, this happens where, oh, Democrats are winning the Ohio Senate race. They're going to win in a landslide. But then September and October hits and, oh, wait a minute, that's not true. This happens every year. And RMG Research is one of the first pollsters to find Moreno with a lead. And the problem for Democrats is, just like Montana, these undecided voters, they lean to the right. Virtually all the undecided voters in Ohio, they're Trump voters. Now, Brown is going to win a chunk of them. I'm not denying that. But for him to win this race at this point, he has to win like 2/3 of undecideds or something crazy like that. Is it possible? Maybe. But I think right now, we're getting to the point that we see every cycle where, oh yeah, polling before like September is very good for Democrats. But then magically at the last second, oh, the polls actually shift towards Republicans. This happened in 2016, this happened in even 2018, 2020, even with Vance, it happened. Remember that? Vance is going to lose to Tim Ryan in early September. He won by 6. This happens every single year. And now, it seems like Moreno is actually taking the lead, which, by the way, this is actually better than Vance. At the same point in 2022, I believe the race was tied. It was like maybe even Ryan +1, according to some polls. I'm not saying that was the actual state of the race, but it seems like in some polling, Moreno's actually outrunning Vance at the same point. Now, is that for sure going to happen? I don't know, but the fact is, it looks like Republicans, they got Ohio. And just like that, Republicans are at 52 Senate seats. Yeah. And that's with 5 races we haven't even talked about yet. And Republicans, we can already say, they're at 52. And I would argue if they win one more Senate race, whether it's Wisconsin, Michigan, Nevada, Arizona, Pennsylvania, if they win one more, they get a real majority. Because at that point, you don't have to worry about Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, and more than likely John Curtis. At that point, you for sure got 50 Republicans that are going to actually be Republicans, not Susan Collins types or Lisa Murkowski types, right? That's why it's a big deal that Republicans, they're already at 52. They got to win one more seat to get to 53. And if they get that, I consider that a real majority. It's not a majority led by Lisa Murkowski. You don't want that, because if you get that under a second Trump term, well, you're getting nothing passed. That's just the sad reality of it. You get nothing done with Murkowski and Collins leading the majority. And Republicans, they have a bunch of possibilities here. They can flip any one of these. There's a chance in all 5 of them. Now, of course, right now, I would argue that Nevada and Arizona especially, it's not looking good for Republicans there. Now, will Sam Brown and Kari Lake lose by 10? No. But Brown's running a bad campaign, and everyone knows my opinions on Lake. She's not running a good campaign at all. I have no clue what she's doing. It's not looking good there. But even then, with how bad Harris is doing in Arizona, according to the polling, by the way, I mean, she's down by like 4 or 5 points. There's a chance for Lake there. But even with those 2 states, right now, leaning towards Democrats, Republicans still could flip one of 3 states: Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. Now, before the cycle, I would have said you're crazy if you thought Pennsylvania was going to flip Republican, especially with David McCormick running. For those that don't know, I never liked this guy. I never trusted him. I thought that he sucked and would have been a disaster. But I have to admit I was wrong. David McCormick is a strong candidate. Now, the RCP average right now is Casey +4, all right? But there's some catches to that. For starters, Quinnipiac had Casey +9, the New York Times, Casey +9. So there are some big outliers here that are moving the average way more towards Casey than it should be. But even then, Casey is below 50. He's in trouble. At this point in time, Bob Casey should be like at 51%. Right now, he's at 48%. And it seems like he's stuck there. He's stuck at 48, 49, 47%. There's some polls that have him at 52, but the problem is, everyone, including the New York Times, they have him at 49%. That's the problem here. He's not at 50. And McCormick, it seems like he's picking up momentum. It seems like he's running such a good campaign that even Democrats are starting to panic here. They're spending a lot of money in Pennsylvania. And at this point in time, I think this is a toss-up. With how bad it sounds like it's getting on the ground for McCasey and Democrats, there's a chance McCormick can actually beat the guy. I never thought I would say that because Bob Casey, before 2024, was a strong candidate. No one thought that he was going to win, or I should say lose. Everyone thought that McCormick was going to lose by a lot. But I was wrong. Everyone was wrong about this race. McCormick has a pathway here, and if he pulls off the upset, that's 53. Is that going to happen? I don't know, but I think right now, it's getting bad for Democrats in Pennsylvania. I know the polling isn't showing that, but some polls are, like the Washington Post, Rasmussen, even polls like CNN and Trafalgar. They're finding the race within the margin of error. The polls that have some huge Casey leads, like I said, they're below 50, and they're from Quinnipiac and the New York Times. Do you really trust Quinnipiac and the New York Times? And even Franklin and Marshall, another garbage pollster. That's the problem for Democrats here. Casey's not doing that good, especially compared to 2018, 2012, where he was up by so much that it didn't really matter. But McCormick has a pathway here, and if he flips the Senate race here, that's 53. And if he loses, he still put up a good fight. And we still have a pathway through Wisconsin or even Michigan. Republicans just have to win one of these three, or even have a huge upset in like Nevada, and they have 53 Senate seats. And like I said, that's a real majority. You don't have to worry about Murkowski types screwing you over. You have 53 Senate seats that are Republican, so even if the three bozos vote with Democrats, well, if Vance is the vice president, he's a tie-breaking vote. There are so many pathways for Republicans here. They got the majority in the bag. And I'm starting to wonder, is this going to be a big majority? I'm not saying it's for sure going to be 54 or 55, but you start looking at the map and you realize, wait a minute, there are a bunch of pathways here. Like McCormick could actually pull it off in Pennsylvania. Hovde could win in Wisconsin. There's pathways here. But we'll see what happens. Again, things could happen where, by some miracle, McCormick wins or loses by 12. I guess that's possible. But right now, Democrats are in a real bad situation in the Senate. They need a miracle in Ohio, Montana, or hell, even Nebraska at this point. They need to somehow win Ohio and flip something else, like Nebraska, like Texas, which is not going to happen, but that's the only pathway now. Anyways, folks, thank you so much for watching. If you guys did enjoy this video, smash the like button down below, subscribe, share with your friends, hit that little bell, follow the social media accounts, the description down below, and of course, join the channel today. Godspeed to all of you.